Do you love inflicting status effects on opponents? Do you like scanning stuff in video games? Do you love micromanaging your inventory because your starting equipment gave you way too many items at the start of the game? If you said no to any of the following, click away now because I'm Ian and this is a Streets of Rogue character guide to The Scientist. The Scientist is unlocked via placing drugs in air vents on 5 separate occasions. I presume this means polluting 5 separate air vents instead of just putting cigarettes in the same air vent 5 separate times, but I am too cheap to buy this game a second time on an alt account to test that theory. As for this character's backstory, it reads, has devoted their life to advancing science and torturing gorillas. As a result of the former, the Scientist has acquired a number of fun toys to take on their adventures. Whilst they would probably prefer to be testing these toys on caged gorillas in the name of scientific progress, read undiagnosed sadism, the Scientist has joined the resistance due to the mayor cutting the beaker allowances to 1 per laboratory. As for your starting setup, you have a pathetic 1 in melee and endurance, and an average of 2 in your other attributes, meaning a head-on conflict is something one should avoid when possible. As for your starting traits, you have the Tech Expert trait, much like the previously covered Hacker, meaning if you can find a steady supply of hacking tools, you can do the same crazy stuff via hacking into electronics as the hacker can with his laptop. A more useful trait you have is Drug-a-Lug, which lets you see what syringes do before you test them out on others or, Lord forbid, yourself. You're also a speciesist. This means you have an unquenchable hunger for Ewok meat, and more importantly, gorillas are hostile to you and will try to kill you on sight. While killing gorillas with this trait does result in you getting more XP than you would normally, I advise against doing this in the first place since they have far better combat stats and you have the skinny nerdlinger trait, meaning you take far more knockback from getting hit as well as recoil from your gun sends you flying. This means that when you're shooting a machine gun at a gorilla, your end goal is not to kill the gorilla, but to have the recoil sending you so far away they don't have a chance to pursue you. As for your starting gear, grab a snack because this is gonna be a long list. First off, we have 2 Gigantizers. These are some magic pills that you can ingest and turn yourself into a giant temporarily. The perfect item to use for whenever violence is in fact the answer. You also start with 3 Rage Poisons, which, as the name entails, turns anyone who is under their influence hostile to everyone temporarily. A Ghost Giver. This is a weapon that is ideal for those who like grave robbing since it's the only way to reliably kill a ghost. Did I say reliably? I meant only way to kill a ghost. With this firearm at your disposal, graveyards effectively become piles of free money since all you have to do is punch gravestones and occasionally pull this thing out for when the ghosts decide to try to punch you to death. Which works to your advantage since ghosts and gravestones have a high chance of dropping boatloads of cash. This firearm also affects zombies as well as NPCs who are sitting in bodies of water, making this great for when you're dealing with a zombie outbreak disaster as well as when you're dealing with aquatic combat scenarios in the unlikely chance that ever happens. Otherwise, this is just a needlessly convoluted form of crowd control that allows you to push people into pits. Moving on, you also have a water pistol. This weapon allows you to insert consumables into them and allows you to inflict their status effects onto others on 5 separate occasions. Very good for your big quest, more on that later, but more importantly, if you can combine it with a cyanide pill, it effectively becomes an instant-kill gun. Did I say effectively? I meant it literally becomes an instant-kill gun with 5 shots. Less powerful, but far more reliable, is the Freeze Ray. The Freeze Ray is perfect for whenever you want someone to stay still for a few seconds. Whether this is because you want to scan them with your research gun or because you just want to run away for dear life is not important. So long as you need them to stay still for a hot minute, this is the gun for you. Then you have my favorite gun in the entire game, the Shrink Ray. Shoot someone with this and then step on them for an easy kill. Not as powerful as putting a cyanide pill in your water gun, but you don't need to rely on RNGesus giving you a cyanide pill in the first place. You also have my least favorite gun in the game, the Leaf Blower. Great for when you want to push people around or off cliffs, but realistically it's just going to be something you pull out in desperation when you frantically search around your inventory trying to find the right item. Lastly, you have the Research Gun, which is used to scan NPCs for your big quest. Speaking of which, let's cover that next. Your big quest is called Ethical Experiments. Questionable naming aside, this quest is easy, to understand at least. You must scan specified NPCs under the influence of designated status effects with your research gun. Both will be visible in the map menu in the far right corner. A crate on every floor will spawn in when you're playing this character that contains a drug that can be used alongside your water pistol to inflict this status effect onto NPCs. However, just like the NPC you need to scan for this big quest, you have absolutely no way of knowing where this crate is aside from just wandering around the map hoping to find it. Meaning you can very easily end up finding yourself wandering a map for several hours trying to find the only firefighter on the floor. Thankfully, however, if the NPC in question you are designated to scan dies out, for example if said only firefighter is killed before you can research them, you end up having the NPC needed for this big quest to change. Sadly, however, this does not apply to the status effect you need to be scanning for this quest. This means if you end up using all the consumables you have on stock for a specific status effect on NPCs before you can scan them with your research gun, you effectively just locked yourself out of completing this big quest. Due to the constant wandering around the map hoping to find the right thing you need for a quest, as well as the very easy possibility of accidentally using the wrong item and making the quest impossible to do on any floor in the first place, this is easily one of the hardest big quests, if not the hardest big quest in the entire game, since mucking this up on a single floor screws you out of getting the benefits of completing this quest. If you do this big quest correctly, your research gun will get an upgrade, and will now start inflicting random status effects on anyone you research with this weapon. Thankfully, NPCs only mind if you inflict them with negative status effects such as poison or slow, so if you end up inflicting positive status effects like regenerating health or invincibility, they will be perfectly okay with you injecting them with drugs. This means in order to complete this quest, you very well might have to end up shooting people with drugs who are taking a dump in a public bathroom. Also, you can scan them while taking a said dump for the purposes of research. If the status effect you need to inflict on someone, however, is negative on a given floor, you can always just use the freeze ray to have them stay still for a hot minute while you scan them. Because all this quest cares about is that you are scanning the correct NPC with the correct status effect on them. It does not matter where they were or if they were wearing pants when you did this, so long as you are scanning the right NPC with the right status effect, you're good. The most reliable way of getting the status effect onto NPCs for your big quest is to simply insert them into your water gun and then shoot the specified NPC you need to scan for this quest. Just remember, when you insert something into a water gun, you have 5 shots, and you cannot insert new drugs into the water gun until all 5 of those shots are used up. This means you may need to discharge your load before you're ready to go again for this big quest. I also recommend checking the local cloning booths if you find something good from the quest crates, since while you can't clone everything those things give you, they can clone some of the things, and some of those things are really good. Besides, having spares of whatever you need for your quest just in case is always nice to have, because while having one status-inflicting drug that you can use to get the quest done is nice, having 2 is just better. I also recommend doing this with the gigantizers that you can pick up at your loadout-o-matics as well, since while you won't necessarily need to inflict gigantism to complete this quest, it's still an incredibly useful ability to have no matter what. I also strongly recommend selling off the Leaf Blower and Ghost Skipper as soon as possible, since while these items can be useful, they take up inventory space, and with this big quest, you're going to be running out of that a lot. All in all, I give the Scientist an inventory management out of 10. If you enjoy micromanaging your inventory, then the Scientist will prove to be one of, if not the best characters in the game to play as. However, if you enjoy not having to think about your inventory space whatsoever in these kinds of games, the Scientist will prove to be one of the least enjoyable characters in the entire game for you. I know it did for me. But that's all for now. Like the video if you did, subscribe if you don't want to miss the next one, comment on what you want to see me cover in the future. I've been Ian, you have been you, and this has been the Streets of Rogue character guide to the Scientist. And stay tuned, the robot is coming up next.